Okay. Hi everyone. My name's Casey. I'm one of WICS, so Women in Information Computer Science co-outreach shares. I'm also a organizer for VenusHacks, so nice to meet you. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and then Gayatri.
My name is Gayatri. I'm also another outreach co-chair for WICS. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a third-year computer science major.
Okay, so this is kind of what we'll be covering today. So on the front end, which I'll be doing, we'll be doing HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. And then on the back end, we're going to be using Python Flask. And just the overall goal is just to build a super basic but end-to-end web app to get you started on your hackathon project. And I'm going to do a quick demo of what we're going to be making today. So give me a second. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, let me share again. And then, okay. So this is kind of the mini website we're going to be making. Basically, this is the home page. We're going to be able to add expenses. Let's say, I don't know, shoes. And then let's say that cost me $30. And I guess travel, we don't have other categories yet. I'm going to hit submit and it'll take us to this view page of all the items. And let's say if I add in another expense, let's say, I don't know, some candy for, I don't know, $4, submit. You can see different categories. You can also filter by category. But that's basically what we're going to be building today. So Gayatri is going to go over the rest of our slides to kind of introduce like front end and back end basic web development so you can get an idea of how everything works.
Yep, okay. Let me go back. Can you see the slides? Yeah, okay. Cool, okay, so how does this work? Well, the way we built it is it has the back end of Python Flask, like she mentioned, and obviously the front end of HTML, CSS, and in this case, not JavaScript, but yeah, your normal front end tools. And so the way it works is the front end, and take the add.html page, for example, it collects information and it sends it to the back end using something called a post request. And so that's just anything where you send data to the back end server and you receive data. So that's called a post request. And then basically the back end then kind of connects with a database. And in this case, we're not going to be using an actual database, but you could definitely, replace the database with any cloud database or anything like that, or local one. But we're going to be using a dictionary. So, your average Python dictionary for this case, but that can be substituted. And so sends it back there, hence the note. And then from the dictionary, it's able to kind of just put that information in there, right? So like whatever you add, let's say it's the candy that she just added, it'll go into that dictionary. Now, so that's like how you add stuff. But there's also, the view page and the home page. So this is the index.html page. So that's our main page. And so the way this works is that the backend now over here sends a different HTML file based on what route your URL is. So in this case, since it was like the home, it just had a slash, it sends like a GET request. So that means I'm not giving it any information, but I am just receiving information. And so the backend's like, okay, that's the home page, and they send whichever HTML file corresponds to that to the front end to show to the user. And then the last thing is the view.html page. So we went over the add and the index, or like the main page. And so the view page, the way it works is it's that GET request. And so it's pretty much similar to the home page, but in this case, we also have the database contents that we need to look into. So it sends the GET request to the backend, which then looks through the database to get all the information that matches whatever it needs on the front end, sends it back to the backend, right, from the database, and shows it on the main screen for people to see on the front end. And so this is your pretty basic, like, end-to-end type flow, except one thing that might be confusing for some people is this backend to database part. Since we're using a dictionary, the backend is pretty much the database as well, like the database in the Python. But if you were to use any external database, like, think MongoDB or like SQLite, if you all know that, although that's also technically in the Python, or MySQL, anything like that, that'll all be like external. So it's an extra step. But then here, we're just going to really be using the Python. So yeah. Oh, oops, not thank you for coming yet. So that is that. And I'm going to stop sharing really quick.
Yeah, and then I'm going to go ahead and we'll start working on the front end. So give me a second. This is is this the right screen? Can you see this? Oh, wait, the wrong screen. Wait, oh, shoot. Give me a sec. I have too many windows open. Okay, 2 seconds. Okay. Desktop. Okay, can everyone see this? Oops. Okay, cool. Let me open the chat just in case. Okay, so we're gonna start with the front end, and we have a lot of it written out for you already because we want to just cover the basics, and in the short amount of time, we don't have time to like code up everything. So I'm gonna quickly go over the basics of an HTML file. So this is what it looks like. You see, we have the HTML tag. We have a head tag, so that's where you import your style sheet. So we've imported something called Bootstrap. And this is like a library that you can use for styling. I highly recommend because a lot of times in hackathons, you don't have time to code up all the CSS yourself. So this is kind of like the documentation, and they have a lot of like components and stuff you can use. Let's say you're looking for like buttons and stuff like that. So go ahead, definitely check that out. Gayatri, if you could link it in the chat, that would be great. We also have our own style sheet that we've written that I'll look at later. And then I also added some Google fonts, and we'll link you the slides that have some instructions on how to do that as well. But yeah, so the main part where we're going to actually be coding is in the body. So this is where everything that we put appears on the actual web page. So we've got a div, which is kind of like a divider or a container. And then I have a couple attributes here. So this is an HTML tag. Class is an attribute. ID is also an attribute. And it's kind of used to add styling. In this case, these classes that I put are, or at least this one is from Bootstrap. So you can look into that. And it does a little bit of formatting for you, which is really nice. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is super simple. We're just going to go ahead and add an H1 tag, which is a header tag. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use HTML syntax, so H1, and then I'm just going to call this my expense tracker. And basically H1 is the biggest header you can use. Oops, if I can spell this right. And it goes all the way to H6. So feel free to play around with that a little bit. And if I go ahead and just run my code, so in the terminal, I'm just going to type Python main.py, and then I'm going to open up my local host. Oops, that's the wrong one. And you should see this is what our header tag creates. So you should see that on your screen. Let us know if you can't, and Gayatri can help you out in the chat. So then the second thing we're going to do is going to be to add an image. So it's actually pretty simple. The way we add an image is using an image tag. So I'm just going to write img, and then the important part is the source. So I'm going to use this attribute called source, and I'm going to set that equal to a image URL. So I'm just going to leave this blank for now. I'm going to close that image tag. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go on Google Images. I'll grab the same one that we have in our demo. And then I'm just going to right click on it, copy image address, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste that into my tag. And it's super long, but that's fine. That should work still. Let me, oh my gosh. Okay, let's Oh, maybe I copied the wrong thing. Let me check real quick. You might have to restart your Python file to see the updates, but let me double check. Yeah, there you go. So you can see my image appeared, just super cool. And then the last thing we're going to do on this super basic page is add some buttons. So in order to do that, we're going to use a, you can either use a button tag, but I can also use A tags, which are anchors or links. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in this case. So I'm going to use a class equal, and I'm going to add some Bootstrap classes that make my button look nice. So I'm just going to go btn, and then space means basically another class name that I'm going to list. So I'm going to use btn success, which is going to make it green. And then I also have my own written code for this home button that I'll show you later. But I'm going to go ahead and add that in too. And then the important thing about a link is you're going to need something called an href. So I'm just going to go ahead and write href equal. And these are basically going to be our routes in our Python file. So I'm just going to flip to that really quick to show you. But in main.py, we have a couple routes, which Gayatri will be creating later. But there's one called /add_page. And I'm just going to go ahead and add this for demo purposes right now. Gayatri will explain more later, but we're going to go ahead and render our HTML file. So you can see we have an add.html. It has some stuff, but we'll be adding to that as well. I'm going to go ahead and go to main.py, and I'm going to render that template. So I'm going to do render template, and then I'm going to put the name of it. So that's just going to be add.html. Okay, and I'm going to go, oh, don't forget the return, my bad. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then before we test it out, I'm going to go back to index.html and oh my gosh, just ignore that super long image name. Sorry, everyone. But I'm going to go ahead and add that route. So it's just going to be /add_page. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that opening tag. And within the two here is where I can put text that will actually show on the button. So I'm just going to call this add expense. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go ahead and stop my thing and rerun it. And then if I refresh my page, you should see this add expense button. And then if you click on it, it should go to our unfinished add page. So yep, that's the first part. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add another link right here. I'm going to actually go ahead and just copy this and paste it because it's the same thing, except this href is going to be something different, but I'm just going to leave it as / for now since we don't have that route implemented yet. And I'm going to change this to view all. Okay, and then Adriana said, how do you know add pages in main.py? So basically how I'm going to tell that is I go to main.py and you see these @app.route statements. So that's the name of the route that does or calls this particular function. So since I added this right here, I know that's the route I'm going to need in order to render that add page. Okay, cool. Okay, let me give me a sec. Okay, so now we've got our really basic I guess, title page. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll start working on the add page. And then main.py function with the same function name. I'm actually not sure, but I would try not to name your functions the same, although I'm not sure if it would actually cause an issue or not. Okay, so I'm going to go to add.html. You should find it in your templates folder in your repository. And we're going to, let's see, so to do number one, we're going to create some extra inputs. So if I go to my ad page and see what it looks like right now, we can type in this box an item. So you can see we have this form tag right here. We have a label, which is where I say item right here, which is associated with this input tag. And you can see we have a type, meaning text. That's how I can type in here. Form control right here is just a Bootstrap class that you can look into to make your forms look nice. That way, if you resize the page, it kind of like adjusts that for you automatically. And the last thing that's really important is this name attribute. Because when Gayatri goes over the back end later, this is how you're going to be able to get this piece of information that the user inputted. And the last thing is this required attribute that you can use to make sure the form can't be submitted unless they've filled out this input. So now that I kind of went over that super briefly, we're going to go ahead and add another input. And this one is going to be for the dollar amount. So I'm going to first just create a label. So I'm going to just do a label tag. And then it's going to be for the input I'm going to call amount. So I'm going to also add that attribute. Let's see. And then after that, I'm going to close it. I'm going to write amount. So this is going to be what's displayed on the label. Okay, cool. And then the next thing I'm going to do is create an input tag. So I'm going to go input, and then the type this time is going to be number. So this way they can't type whatever they want. I'm going to give an ID of amount. I'm going to give it class equal form control for that Bootstrap styling. Name, super important. I'm going to call that amount so we can access it on the back end. And then I'm also going to make it required. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like now. So I'm going to rerun my Python file. I'm going to refresh my local host. And you can see you have that amount field now. And it comes with these handy dandy little arrows that may or may not look different based on what browser you're using. Okay, so that's that first to do. Let's see what we have next. Okay, the next thing we have is a category dropdown. We have a label for it again, and we have something called a select tag, which is another name for a dropdown essentially. And you can look here, we have it, but there's nothing in this dropdown yet. We need to create category options. So I'm going to add some option tags here. So option, and then what's really important is the value attribute. So this is the value that gets sent with the form's like submission. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it value equal. I'll do food. And then inside the two tags, we're going to write whatever you want to be displayed. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this 2 more times. And I'll do travel. And feel free to do whatever categories you want, as long as you make sure the value matches up to whatever you type to display. Otherwise, the user is going to be confused. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and rerun my app, and I'm going to refresh. And now if you click your drop down, you should be able to see all these different options, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's see. And then the last thing for this page that we're going to do is we're just going to add a back and a submit button, because right now our form doesn't do anything yet. So not super exciting. I'm going to create another A tag like we did on that other page for the first button, the back button. So I'm just going to do A tag. I'm going to give it an ID equal back button. And this is CSS that I wrote. I'll show that after this page, actually. And then we're going to give it an href equal. And then if I go back to my main, if I want to go back to render the index.html page, my home page, the route is /. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as / right here. And then I'm going to add another class, and this one's going to be btn space btn - danger. So this is going to be a red Bootstrap button. And then I'm just going to have it display back here. Okay. And then the last part of this page is the submit button. And what's cool about this is you can actually use an input tag again, because this is inside of a form. I'm going to give it a class so that it looks like a button. So btn success. And then type equals submit. Oopsie, what happened? There you go, submit. Okay, so this is going to be automatically called the form submit function, which Gayatri will show you later. But I'm going to go ahead and just rerun this really quick so you can see our changes. And you should see 2 buttons appear right here, and the back button should go back to the home page. So you should be able to go back and forth. And I've been mentioning this, but I'll show you the CSS file really quick. Just to recap, you see how we have an ID of back button right here. If I go to my static folder, style.css, you can see we have a bunch of stuff here. And the back button one is right here. But just a quick overview. So with CSS, you basically use something called a selector. And then you have all these properties that are going to be applied to whatever HTML elements have that selector. So in this case, these are HTML tag names, so body, image, h1. If you want to add styles to a specific class, let's say I have a class called page, it would be dot page. And then if you have an element with an ID, you would do the selector with a hashtag. And basically IDs have like the largest, I guess the best priority or highest priority. So that's just a side note, but we have a bunch of resources linked in our README for the workshop, so you can read up on the details of CSS properties. Okay, let's see. I'm almost done with the front end, so thanks for sticking with me, everyone. But I'm gonna open the view page lastly. So we're not going to be able to look at it quite yet, but you'll see it when Gayatri links it up with the backend. But what's going to happen here is we're going to have a table, and this table is going to display everything in our kind of fake database for the sake of simplicity. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. We are going to create that drop down. So in the other file, we had that kind of set up for you, but this time we're going to have you write most of it. So in order to do that, inside this form tag, we are going to create a dropdown. So if you remember, it's called a select tag. And I'm going to give it an ID equal view form. I'm going to give it class equal form control so it looks pretty. Name is really important. Again, that's how it gets stored in or sent to the backend. So we're just going to abbreviate category as cat for now. It's going to be required. And then, yeah, that's all we'll do for now. I'll have Gayatri fill the other part in. But I'm going to go ahead and open that tag. And inside, remember, we're going to need some option tags. So I'm just going to go ahead and do option value equals, let's see, all. Okay. And then display all. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy that 3 more times for each of our categories. So don't forget to change the value as well. So this one's going to be food. We're going to do travel. Okay, and then let's see, entertainment. So these can be whatever you want. So don't worry about copying me exactly. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And then let's see, is there any other front end stuff here? I don't think so. So when Gayatri works with you guys, you'll see how we can load all of our data in to actually display on the HTML. But yeah, I think I'm done. Did I miss anything, Gayatri, before I pass it off to you?
I don't think so. I think you had some styling things, but you can always, for all of these, like the IDs for each option. I'll probably add that later. But okay, I think it looks good.
I don't think we use them, so you can probably just skip over it. Okay, cool. Let me start screen sharing. And then Gayatri is gonna do the backend. And let us know if you have any questions, or if we're like moving too fast, too slow, like anything like that.
Okay, so do you all see my screen? Can you see the code?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so what Casey just went over was a lot of front-end HTML/CSS things, but what we're gonna kind of take a quick turn and look at the Python at this point. And so I just want to give you a quick overview on what is in here, because there's a lot of like pre-written code in here, but it could be a bit tricky if you've never worked with Python Flask before. So basically, this is a different type of website in the sense you saw how Casey kept refreshing the Python in order to run the code or see the changes. And that's basically because everything is being run through this backend. So normally, you have like JavaScript and like HTML and CSS, and everything's kind of like run based on that. But here you want to just make sure that it's restarting the Python server, because that's what's rendering all of those HTML pages. And then by rendering, I just mean that's basically what's showing it on that local host. So it's really important that you have your Python, your main.py file working. And so really quick to just go top to bottom, we imported Flask and it has certain libraries in it, which are like the request, render template, and redirect. So those are the ones that we'll be using. And if anyone had trouble with those, then it probably won't work. Like your entire thing might not work. So I would drop them in the chat or see if you can import them, pip install them, basically. You just need to pip install Flask though. So let us know if you're having trouble with that. But yeah, and so this is our Flask app. So this is what we're actually running. And we just inherited it from the Flask class. And the fake dictionary we were talking about, which is supposed to mimic like an external dictionary, sorry, database, is this expenses dictionary. And I call it a dictionary, but it's actually a list of dictionaries. So if you think of a database, you have a list of a bunch of dictionary objects. So same thing here. So expenses is a list, but we'll be putting dictionary objects into it. And then you have all of our functions. And as you can see, and there's a question on this earlier. So to clarify that and just add on to what Casey was saying, each app.route goes to a certain URL, and each one is paired with a function as well. So it's trying to say that if you make a get or a post request to this URL, then this function will run. That's kind of how that works. And so basically, you just want to make sure that whatever you put, so for example, in the index.html, see how she put a slash here. That's going to go back to the Python. It's going to search for which one is going to the slash URL, which is this, and then it's going to run that function. So hence, when at this point, right, when you click, when you click view all, since we haven't added it yet, it's just going to take you back to the index.html page. It's just going to re-render that basically based on the logic that's here. So like that, same thing for the add page. And same thing for, like if we were just getting the information, it would be the same thing for view. But since we wanted to interact with the database and we also want to send information and things like that, the view one's going to be slightly different. And so we're going to actually just start off by doing this view cat method, so the change category method. And so this is whenever someone works with this guy over here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so whenever you select a dropdown to filter by, that's kind of basically telling the backend, hey, we changed to this tab. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take out pass here. And so since we're getting information, the way you get information on all Python things are whenever it's post, you have two things you have to look for. Number one is on the place you're getting it from, you want to look at name, because that's going to be the name of the variable in a sense in the backend. And so here our name is cat. So we want to kind of get that. And basically over here, all we're going to do is we're going to say return render template. And we want it to still show us the view.html page, which we will be working on in a second. But, oh, oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. It should be up here. Okay, yeah, so we still wanted to show us the view.html page because we're just changing category on the same page. But now we have an added thing of creating a category variable. So we're going to do category equals whatever category equals or all, where it defaults to all. And so what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to put that. Okay. And then for this one over here, we have like a view and we have a change category. And so for, oh, wait, I spelled all wrong. Also, my bad, I have them out of order. This one should be first. It kind of helps to have this first, but okay. So on the view one, we're doing category equals all, sorry. And then on the view category one, that's a post. So we're gonna get the variable from the backend. So yeah, so def, just to put it into order. You can move this up here if it helps, but basically this is going to be the page if you just go to it without filtering. And this view category is the one that uses that cat variable. So yeah, make sure you don't do what I just did. So you want to be on the view category one over here. Okay. Then on change category, we're going to be using the change category thing. So here we're going to say category equals. And remember how I said at the back end, it has the word cat per name? We're going to be saying request, or sorry, form.request, I believe, or request.form. There we go, okay. And then in here, we want to make sure that we look for that cat variable. So like that. So basically what I'm saying is I want to set a variable equal to whatever cat is in the front end. So if I were to change, just for example, right, if I were to change in view.html, if I were to change this over here to like category, then I would also change it over here to category. That's how you kind of move information from the front to the back using a post request. Okay, and then the last step here is we just want to return, basically re-render it based on this request here. So I'm going to say return. And okay, does anyone have questions? I know I kind of went through that kind of fast. Does anyone have questions about the like category? Do you all understand where this variable is coming from, like the request.form? And how if we change it in the front end, it changes its name here. You can react or put it in the chat. But yeah, as long as you kind of get that. And I can go over it again if y'all have questions. Okay, yeah, the thing is I could, if the problem with this page is it doesn't run fully until you complete this, but I can show you how it looks without this change category part implemented. So let me finish this and then we can try running it. So we want to do redirect. So we're gonna basically be saying that if they change the category, we want to reset the page to kind of only give the ones in that category. And we're going to be using a different, something called Jinja to kind of filter. But basically here, we just want to redirect to the view page. So I'm going to say /view/ and it's going to be matching this right here, plus whatever the category is. So, okay, so we did two things here. I just want to rehash what we did. First thing is if you just look at the category without, or sorry, if you just look at the view.html page without changing the category or anything, all it's going to do is going to render the view.html with the category as all. And then if you do decide to change the category, it creates the variable by grabbing it from the front end. And then it redirects you to the view page where the category is different. And so I would show you how it looks on the HTML, except there's one more step we need on the front end, which uses something called Jinja to actually load everything. So it's not going to work until we have this part, that part fixed as well, which is why it's slightly hard to not be able to visualize it. But yeah, hopefully you get this part. So basically render template is just to show it. And then here we're redirecting that URL with a new category we got from the front end. So yeah, just make sure you have both of these functions, and then we can move on to actually making it show up on the table. And at that point, I will run it so you can kind of see how it looks. But yeah, okay, let me also just, I was going to stop the Python, but I cannot. Okay.
Let me just a sec.
Yeah. Okay, so just make sure you have these two functions. we don't need the add item yet.
I should be running again.
Okay, cool. And I mean, one thing we can just do the add item as well here. And so this is also, you can try the add, but it's not going to show up until we finish the Jinja part. But for adding items, it's very similar to what we just did for the category, where Casey was mentioning the name attributes, right? So if you go back to the form on the add.html, you have your name for the item, name, amount, and name category. And so we're going to grab those three variables in here. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to say name equals, and I'm going to say request. So same thing as before, dot form. And here I'm going to put name, because that's what we named it. And then same thing for the other two, amount and category. So I'm going to say amount equals request.form. And then here I'm going to put amount. And then the last one is category. I'm just going to put cat request.form and category. Now, a couple of things that I want to address. It's like, how do we know it's going to the right form? Well, it says add as the URL over here. And if you go to the add page on the top of this form, it has add as the action. So that's how it connects it to the backend. And then basically these are the variable names right here to get the information. So we're just taking those variable names from the front end, and we're making them variables in the back end. And then we're gonna get the expense item. So now we're gonna make a dictionary out of those items. So the dictionary is gonna also have those three things. It's gonna have the name, which is gonna be equal to name, like the variable. It's gonna have the amount, which is equal to amount, the variable. And it's going to have category. So it's going to look like this. And then lastly, if you had a real database, you would be like sending it to the database. But since we have expenses, what we're going to do is we're going to add or append this dictionary to the expenses list. So we're going to add expense item to the expenses list. So I'm going to leave this up here for a minute, just in case anyone still needs to write things down. Okay. Okay, and I think what was confusing was that we actually might need to add one more function to this backend to finish it up. And so that last function is going to be, there's a view page, but since we don't necessarily use that, okay, we can just edit this one. So there's one more like piece of logic we do need to add. And that's just based on this category. So in the view here, what we want to do is we want to actually only return this if they didn't already give us a category. And so what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to do a little bit of manual if statements. And so every time you run this, you'll get a category already. So if the category is equal to all, which is going to be the default, then you want to send this to the back end, or you want to send this to the front end with the category as all. But if the category is not that, then you have to actually manually sort that out to fit whichever one it's supposed to be. So for this, we will need an if and an else statement. And the else is going to be whatever other situation there is. So we can use something like a list comprehension. So basically we can say, like, for all of them, you only want the ones with whichever category the parameter has here. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that list really quick. So it's just going to be I, for I, in expenses, right? Because that's our list. If I's category matches the category that they give us, like that. And then I'm going to actually return this instead if it happens like that. So I'm going to say return. And I can either write 2 return statements, or I can actually write a general return statement. But yeah, let's do it that way. Let's actually make this right here. Let's make data equal to expenses. And then down here, we can just write a general return statement where we say we want to basically send A, the data to the front end, but also B, send only the data that matches the category. So over here, I'm going to put render template. And it just saves us from having like 2 separate return statements for each one. So I'm going to first put view.html. That has not changed. And then I'm going to say category. And for those of you who don't know Jinja, this is actually basically saying I want to send these variables to the HTML side of things, which we'll get to in a second. And then data equals data, like that. Okay. So just make sure you have this over here as well. So this function, and the add function. And then lastly, we just have one more thing to add in the view.html. That's going to be our Jinja code. And so Jinja, basically, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's like Python in the HTML. It's like being able to script, in a sense, in the HTML code. So for this part over here, it says use Jinja to render. And this is slightly like it's a bit hard to wrap your head around at first, but then it kind of makes more sense. But basically the way Jinja works is it takes the variables that you sent in the render template. So here, right, I created a category, which I'm gonna use in the front end, and I created a data I'm gonna use in the front end. And so here, what I want to do is I want to put, why does it do that? Oh, wait, Casey, can you move your cursor slightly down? I don't know if it's going to your cursor or if it's just my screen. Okay, so basically here, what we want to do is we want to write like a for loop. So for item in data, and assume that, you know, assume that this is the same data object that you sent from the Python. And this is kind of like Python in the front end. So for item in data, and you do want to make sure you have the curly brace and the percentage. That's how it recognizes that it's Jinja and it's not just like HTML. And once you do that, you want to create the table, right? So we're going to have our tr and our /tr. And then in here, we want to create each table item. So as you see, we have an item, amount, and category. So one thing we might have to change slightly is since we named it in the database as like name, over here, we'll probably have to use the word name, but basically what we're going to do is TD for each item. And then in between, we're going to use Jinja again. So we're going to put double curly braces. That's how it knows it's a variable. And we're going to say item. And then in there, we're going to put in name like that. And then you can go ahead and copy paste this. And then in here, we're going to put the second thing, which is amount, and last thing, which is category. Okay. And then finally, at the end, we want to close the for loop. So the way we do that is curly braces, %, sign, and end for, like that. So this is what Jinja is. And the reason why I couldn't show you how it worked earlier was because even though we're sending all the data in the back end, it needs to basically reformat in the front end for it to work using Jinja. So this is like Python for HTML. So it needs to be able to parse that data in order for it to work. So now I can rerun the server and we can see how it looks when I actually do that. So the one last thing before I ask Casey to rerun it, we have everything written out and it's good to go here. But there's one last step that we do need to do in order to see it. And that is saying that we want them to get this information when they change the category. So over here, we're going to add one more parameter called onChange. And then this is basically saying that whenever I change that drop-down menu, I want it to like submit the form. So I have that information in the backend. Because otherwise I could just be changing this, but the backend will never know when I changed it, right? So here it's saying whenever I change it, just know that I want you to submit that new category to the backend. Okay. And so I believe Casey didn't make for the view all over here, just make sure this view all over here matches the URL in the main. So the URL in the main for view should be this one, the view category. So over here in the index, you just want to make sure you change it to view /. And so for this category part, it's a bit different, right? Because like it's not necessarily always all. It's only at sometimes all. But since the default is going to be all, we can actually just say, hey, we want that one to be all if they just click the button from the home page. So we're going to say /view /all. Okay. And I think that should fix that. So if I rerun this, wait, Casey, can you rerun the?
I just hit rerun, but
You did? Okay.
Should
So
be updated.
Let's first check a couple things. So first thing I want to do is I want to click add expense. So it takes me here. And from here, I just want to make sure that it gives me an item. So I'll just do a food, I don't know, grapes for $5. And you all can try this as well and submit. Okay, so it's because this thing is add and it should be add page, I think. So I'm going to quickly...
Wait, no, it's not that, Gayatri. I think it's because I didn't add the route for it on the form in the add page.
Ah, okay. I can do that really. Oh, you did. It's over here. Oh, add page.
really?
Okay. I think it's like that, right? So yeah, like I said, it has to match over here. So since mine said add and not add page, sorry, my mouse is following Casey's.
Oh, you have to unfollow me.
Yeah. Oops. I didn't realize this on that. Okay. But you see how it didn't match up? So the URL didn't match up the one back here. So I would change that in the add here to add page. Okay, let me refresh. Okay. Grapes for 10. Submit.
I think that's the add method, Gayatri. Wait, let me double check. It should be /add for the form, but I don't think I added it to the button. Let me look really quick. /add.
Oh, it's the add item down here. It might be because it needs to re-render the page. So what we can do here is, I think on the add function, we want to re-render the page. So we should return at the end, render template
Or do
View?
redirect
Yeah.
view slash all.
Okay. View, so slash view, like that. So it's going to be the same redirect from here. Okay. Let's try that again. Oh wait, I can do it.
I reran it.
Okay, okay.
Dude.
Okay, grapes. Typing grapes like 3 times now. Does it work on your side?
Let me double check. Just adding, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think we're missing something. Let me double check what the get click redirect view says bad. Let's see. Redirect and item. Get I do have slash add.
I think what, oh, okay. So in the add, I think what we want to do is change his name here to name. Over here on the input. Yeah.
That's another thing.
Okay.
Equal. Oh, did you? Wait, let me do. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Okay, let me try it now. Wait, sorry, do you update it or should I re?
Oh yeah, you should be able to run it. I shared the terminal with you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me go to that terminal and rerun it. But basically at this point, okay. So I think what we need to change, and this is another thing for troubleshooting, is name over here should match the name over here. So since I said form name, I think that just has to be the same thing. But once we change that, should match up. So okay, let's just change both of these to item because I think that might help it recognize it. So I'm just gonna make that item like that on both. Hopefully that fixes it. It's not letting me open up your shell, so you might need to rerun it. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll wait for her to rerun it before I do this page. But yeah, we changed 2 things basically. I changed this over here to item, and then I changed it in the add over here to item.
Oh, I think it works now. Go ahead and
It works.
test it.
Okay. 10. Okay. Cool. Oh, we're on the same one? Okay, sorry, my bad. I think I had the wrong name over here, but once you fix that, because over here, there's one more field that I didn't realize was there. Up here, there's the item. So for item, since we're linking it in the Jinja using the item, but also here, since it's kind of like linking these two, we want to, like the label and the item, it just has to be item together, I guess. So now it should work. And so that's basically the add and the regular view all category. So as you can see, we have all here. And the rest of them don't have anything. So we can go back and add like other categories. So like hello, that's nothing, but get travel. Okay, so that shows up as travel. And then the last step would be checking the category, right? So if I do food, we want to make sure that this part over here catches but the category is equal to whatever category. So mine just, oh, hold up, I need to refresh. Did you add the filter category part in the view? So over here, okay, really quick over here, we need to add one more option where.
Wait, Gayatri, instead of that, can you finish the form tag actually to make it functional?
The form tag, yes,
this
I can.
part right here.
Yes, so for this part, right, we need to add the method. So you saw how in the add, this part, the form tag matched the main attributes of the app.route. So we want to change it so it matches this one here on the view one. So over here, it's a post method. So I'm going to go ahead and type in post. And also it has an action. And so the action is going to be view category. I'm going to say /view/category. And so that will link them together. And once you do that, we do need to add one more option.
We can skip that, Gayatri. We're like over time already, so we'll just test it out first. I reran it too.
Okay. Let me go back. Grapes, 34, submit. Okay, so now if I go to food, I think I wrote this in wrong. I think it's a view -cat, sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna rerun that.
Rerun it.
Okay, so here I'm gonna redo grapes. Okay, so now it should work on the view cat, I believe. So I'm gonna go to food. Okay, so it gives me this. Then go to travel. Gives me nothing. Go back to food. Should re-give me that. And so the thing is, as you can see, it kind of defaults to all. So if you wanted to change that, you could add one more option here that just says filter by category. But that's just like a stylistic thing. So the rest of it should work. And so on a little, like, I know it's all over the place, so I just want to kind of sum up what we added. But on the main, basically, the three main things that we did here where we added an item, which is this request.form is how you get stuff from the front end. And then to view an item, we kind of gave it like an ID. So if it's all, then it's just all the items. And if not, it's in that list that we have up there. It's only the ones that match that category. And then lastly, to change the category, basically every time you modify this, it submits whatever you modified it to. And then that changes the category and redirects using like filling this part in. So it runs this filtering and then renders the new one using something called Jinja, which is down here, which loops through the data and gives you a new result. So they're all very interconnected in the sense like all the names, I guess, have to be the same. And you just have to make sure that the data is, like you saw, a lot of times I just wrote the wrong name, so it didn't connect properly. But as soon as we fixed each thing, it was able to find each thing end to end. So that's how that works. And yeah, that's pretty much that part. The code will be given to you. Hopefully you understand what it does, but you can look into it for more detail and play around with it. So you can see that it works properly and links. And if you change, let's say you're not doing expense tracker, this is the last thing. If you change the values in your dictionary over here, what you want to do is you want to change them in the Jinja. So you want to make sure you have the correct values in here. And then also, if you change whatever's in your form, you want to make sure that the name here matches the item from the form that you're getting. So all the variable names need to be exactly the same for it to be able to grab it from the right spot, if that makes sense. So that's pretty
Okay.
much that.
Any last questions before we wrap up? Thank you everyone for coming. Hope you learned something today. But yeah. Feel free to look at the GitHub repo. We have a bunch of links to like Bootstrap components, extra information about CSS if you want to look into that too. And yeah, good luck everyone with your projects. I'm excited to see them.
Yeah, and sorry if I confused you all. Just look over the documentation at the end. It's like they're very interconnected, so it's hard for me to show you each part. But yeah, when you run it end to end, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about like the variables and then the URLs. So it'll be a lot easier to see what goes with what. But yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close this meeting so we don't have more conflicts with Zoom meetings. So thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye. Let us know if you have questions in the Discord too.
Or Slack.
Slack. Also, someone wanted to get added to the Slack.
I answered a question about Slack. Everyone should
Okay.
get an invite to their email. So it's not a general invite link. It's specific to their email they applied with.
Okay.
But yeah. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting. But yeah.